How's it going, everyone? We're going to keep working on the LS swap Montero today, and last video you saw we got the motor in there, kind of just mocked up looking, seeing where motor mounts got to go and stuff like that. Right now I'm going to be working on the trans mount, which I'm just going to be modifying the stock Montero transmission cross member to fit the 4L60E mount. This is the 4L60 trans mount right here. It just mounts on the bottom side of the transmission there, and this is the Montero cross member. So these two holes right here are actually very close, but I mean they're not spot on. So what I'm gonna do is grind down right here, and I'm gonna plate it with either 1/8 inch, probably 1/8 inch, plate it there, and then drill new holes for this to go through. And then on the back side, I'm going to cut all this out. I'm going to plate the inside of it with 1/8 inch, so it'll be an additional 1/4 inch of steel in there to hold it, which will be plenty. And then I'll cover these holes back up. I'm going to get going on the trans mount here. So I'm just going to grind all this down to bare metal. That way I can mark it all out and cut out another piece to weld on top of it. I got these pieces cut out and I drilled them for the right pattern to just slide in there. You can see how close the old mounts were, about 1/4 inch off either side. So I just marked the center of this, marked the center of the trans mount or the trans cross member itself, and just line those up, and I'll tack weld it in there and drill the holes again, and then it'll be good. Day like 3 of working on this thing. I was making motor mounts yesterday, but it just wasn't working out, so this is kind of what I got going. But as you can tell, as you can see, the actual mounts are offset here, so it just puts too much stress on it, on this mount. So the only reason I made it like this is because since I was trying to adapt the LS mount, I only had like a little space like this to mount it to. But I just have to wait until the steel yards are open. I have to wait until the steel yards are open to get the materials I need. So in the meantime, I am trying to bypass the neutral safety switch on the Montero thing, and I think I found it. That's kind of been a project for me to do. So if you can see down there, I don't know, I have all of the transmission wiring and stuff is connected to the starter wiring and the alternator wiring. That whole harness plugs into the Montero like body kind of. It all comes in here. Right there. So I have to kind of go through these wires and see which ones are all neutral safety. This bit is a little bit more catered towards Monteros, but it might work for like 4Runners or Land Cruisers or something like that. But this is the neutral safety switch wiring. I had this whole plug. Basically you can see all those wires on it, and that plugged in down there under the dashboard, and I found the wiring diagrams a little bit. There's not a lot of diagrams out for this thing, but these two wires right here are the only ones that control neutral safety. So this goes down and plugs into the starter solenoid thing, so it knows when to start. And then these two wires go to the neutral safety switch, and they are looped when it's in park or neutral. So all you gotta do is loop it. Now if I put it in like this, it'll start in drive or reverse or any of those. And I don't really want that, but for now it will work. To start the engine up once I get it in. I just wanted to make sure everything worked before I had the engine and trans in. So that's what I had to do. Like I said, this might work for some other cars, but this is just what worked for the Montero. All these wires, you don't need it all. This is the transmission harness. You don't need any of those. So this is an input and an output for it. I'm not sure which one's input. This black one I think is an output. So these I think I can plug into the 4L60E harness. That way I still have a neutral safety. So we'll see about that. Hopefully it works out. So I had to call around and find a steel place that was open right now. And I found one, and I went and got some 1/4-inch plate. So this is what I did. It's very, very simple. This is what they sell online for like 40 bucks. So I just went and bought some 1/4-inch plate and cut it down. That was hard actually because I don't have a plasma cutter or anything. 1/4-inch plate, cut it down, and now I just have a flat spot to mount to, which is great. Put the water pump on. I'm gonna put the power steering pump and alternator on in a second, just to get the right dimensions for when I put it in the car. So, and I'll bolt the trans up to it also. I cleaned it off a whole bunch. It was super dirty, but I'm pretty sure this thing's been replaced. It's got a number or an H written right there, so I don't think they came like that. This transfer case might be different, but like I said, they were missing a bolt up here somewhere, one of the hard ones. So they probably replaced it. Usually these transmissions go out at like 200,000 miles, and that's about what this thing was at. So I was hoping that it had a new transmission, and we'll find out once this thing's all in and together. Okay, so we initially tried to put the motor and the transmission in at once with just this area cleared out, and that did not work. There's not enough room. So then we tried to put the transmission in first, kind of reverse the way we took it out. That didn't work either because it's just way too hard to try and mate up the engine to the transmission without actually having transmission mounts or anything. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take out this entire front piece, the bumper. I'm going to cut this out because I think that's where my radiator is going to go. And I'm just going to make plenty of room to just drive in the engine and trans together. That way it makes it a lot easier to make mounts and get it all lined up. Off. I'm gonna have to cut it, the body right here, and that way we can drive the engine trans in as one unit. Okay, I got that piece cut out. That piece is structural to the body, so I'll try and rebuild something there, something removable, because I have a feeling the only way to get the engine and trans in and out is as one unit once it's in there, unless I can somehow create some clearance in here. This is going to be a problem. I might have to cut it and put a plug here or something like that. Alright, with a lot of doing and about 30 minutes of sliding stuff around, we got the engine and trans in as one unit. This is pretty damn close to where it's going to sit. The only problem with right now that we see is the transfer case. Transfer case is very close to the torsion bar, and it needs to actually move over a little more this way towards the torsion bar. So I think I'm gonna have to cut these nubs off here. That'll give me a little bit more room, and I might have to lift it up a little bit so I can have like an inch of space here. That's really the only problem. If the engine's offset a little bit, it's not gonna be a big deal. I mean, 1/8 of an inch or a 1/2 inch, nobody's gonna notice, and it will work. So that's really all that matters. It sits in there really nice. It's basically level here. The car is fully supporting the weight of it, so that's good. And it didn't even dip down too much. I don't think it's much heavier than the original setup. This thing just looks awesome with the intake on it. It's gonna be a monster. The whole front's cut out of it, but that's why I got 1x2 1/8 inch and 1x1 1/16 inch just to frame out the core support and all that stuff. But man, this thing looks like a beast. It's gonna be awesome. Fits in the hood perfect. This is about, this has got to be where it's going to be. It looks pretty damn even. But yeah, it looks awesome. I'll be able to use the stock cable and all that stuff. I'm going to clean up this intake a lot, and then I'll bolt it on. All of it. Alright, another day. Didn't get too much done today, but I did get a little bit. I'm waiting right now on some motor mount bushings, some poly bushings, because I can't reuse the Montero ones. I'm just going to make custom ones, because they hit the starter. So there's not much room down there in the starter area. Yeah, so it's just going to be real simple. Tube down, and there's going to be a bushing up there. Super easy. I cleaned everything, and I painted the valve covers red with some caliper paint that I had. It looks good from, it's about a 5-footer here. I'm not very good at painting stuff, but I did that. Clean the intake a whole bunch, so you could eat off that. And I did. Very clean. I lifted the engine up another ½ inch or so. It's plenty of room under the hood and stuff. I just needed to lift it a little bit so I could clear the transfer case on the bottom. So now the transfer case clears pretty well, and the pinion angle's right. Everything's good. So you guys can't see anything, but like I said, I was going to cut those nubs off, and I'll have another inch of room down there. And the power steering pump actually fits pretty good. Yeah, there's a tube back in there if you guys can see that. Right, I'll point to it. It's right there, that one. That one is pretty close to the steering box. So when it does rev, it'll rotate that way instead of the other way, and it won't hit there. So it should be fine there. Yeah, I think I'm going to make the trans mount, because I'm still waiting on my motor mounts to come in. Plenty of room back here. Like, lots of room, surprisingly. And that's good. It'll be even easier to work on. And the front to back isn't too bad. It's about right in line with the front tire. So half of it over, half of it back, which is good. Actually, this is a mid-engine car now. Wow. Just getting ready to weld up the trans mount. This is how I designed it. Kind of made it notched out to fit the contour a little bit there. And this is just 1/8 inch, but the mount on the 4L60 is also 1/8 inch, so it's like bolting it to 1/4 inch. And then that goes down to the cross member. So I'm just going to weld it up and have the trans bolted in now. Got it nice and painted. Make sure you paint it when it's hot, that way it dries really fast and you can do stuff with it. So that's all it is. Just kind of a spacer. It's turned out pretty nice, actually. I think I'll cover that top part so I don't get any water in there. But that's about it. This will mount the transmission. Got my motor mounts in the mail. They're just some simple polyurethane bushings. First step is going to be to cut a piece of steel or tubing that will fit in between here. Luckily I have the perfect size for it. Shouldn't be too hard. Got these tubes cut out here, both of them. All the bushing does, it just goes like this, right? Slides in there like that, and you get the other guy. It also slides in there. It's perfect. Weld the tube to this, and then bolt goes through. Alright, I made these tabs that kind of mount on the frame like that. Just got a grade 5 bolt in there, should be plenty. All that does is mount like this. Just like that. Right. And then I'll have a tube coming down from here, and it'll just mount right up. Should be actually really nice. I made these symmetrical, so pretty good. So I'll clean these up a bit. I'll probably just round them out, make them look nice. And once they're on the frame, I might backplate them too, just to make it more strong, I ended up having to take the engine out, so I can grind down in here. So you can see how that's going to go on there, right in the corner. grind it down to metal and grind it down to metal over there. I'm going to weld them in, and then we'll be able to put the engine back in and finalize it all. Got the ears welded in. I didn't end up cleaning them off or anything. I think they look fine. Fully welded front and back. I welded nuts on the back so I don't have to reach back there and try to grab any of it. But yeah, so it's looking good. They're still super hot, so I'll paint them in a minute. That way the paint dries a little faster. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. Before the trans goes back in, I cut these two nubs off because they were kind of close to my control arm or my torsion bar. So I just chopped them off. Looks good now. Just getting ready to weld these motor mounts in. As you can see, it's just very simple. 1.5 inch pipe or tube going up to each plate. They're not perfectly centered or anything, but that shouldn't matter too much. You can see here it's kind of catching the front of the engine because I kept the stock Montero mounts in there, which is that's fine. It's still on the metal. It's on. I've seen some LS motor mount plates that slide way back and forth, so this is totally fine. And so I'm going to tack those in, and then I'll take them out, take the bushings out, and weld them in all the way. Got the mounts out, put some decent beads on them, on the bushing side at least, all the way around, because this is 1/4 inch, so I got to plug this thing into 220 instead of 120. But yeah, so yeah, pretty good. Pretty decent on it. Got both the motor mounts welded up. Just hooked it up to 220 and burned it in there. I used the 3/16 setting on it and just pushed it from the 1/4 inch to the 1/8 inch. So looks like it's gonna work pretty well. I'll slap a coat of paint on these guys and put them in. It's in, guys. I finally got it mounted. There are my motor mounts right there. Holding it up. It's perfect. It looks great in there, actually. Finally got the no more jack stands or jacks. It looks awesome. Doesn't get in the way of anything. They're pretty compact. I mean, pretty slim for what they are, you know. And plenty strong. Got poly bushings in there, so it's not going to tilt too much. This might be a little harsh ride, but I mean, this thing's never ridden too well anyways. Looks awesome. V8 5.3 Montero. I had a little bit of a screw up. Alright, so I mean, it's my first time doing something like this. You guys saw the Volvo before. It's not done yet, of course, but I'm still working on both of them. When I was putting in the transmission the first time to mount the engine in, I had the torque converter in, right? I could have sworn I seated it, but as it turns out, I did not seat it, and the engine wouldn't turn over when it was in there before, when I was making the trans mount, and I figured I would just be able to take it out and seat the torque converter in there, but that was not the way it worked out. So the torque converter wouldn't spin even if it was seated. So I took the front pump apart, and I had a cracked rotor, like the oil pump rotor. So I got all that stuff ordered. It should be here in the next week or so, but I'm glad I got the engine in there, and it looks great. I'm glad I did the red valve covers. It kind of brings it out a little bit. If you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. You're going to get more videos of me doing stuff like this. It should be done in the next couple weeks, so stay tuned. I'm going to get those parts put in, and we're going to get this thing started.